Will North American consumers pay more for an agricultural commodity that has a purported environmental benefit? That's what we're delving into in this episode of The Business of Agriculture. Hey, Damian Mason here with a question before we hop into this episode of The Business of Agriculture. If you farm for a living, you employ a lot of amazing technology, from your inputs that you put into the soil to the tractor that you sit in, your combine, and the amazing data that it harvests. But has your soil analytics kept up technologically with everything else in your farming operation? I would venture to say that no, it is not. Sure, you check for your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, your micronutrients as well. But what about disease pressure? Do you know what diseases and what pests you're going to face next year? No, you don't. But you can now figure that out with Pattern Ag's predictive analytics. Think about it. They can tell you now with testing what the likelihood of facing nasty diseases, things like cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome, what the likelihood of you having this in your field. Then you know how to prepare, how to treat, and where to invest your money. It's using technology to make you bigger yields and therefore make you bigger money. Go to www.pattern.ag to learn more. They are pioneering the way in predictive agronomy. Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. I got a good topic for you today, and it's something that I think we're going to be hearing more about, which is why I'm sharing it with you. I've got Dylan Vaca with the DeLong company and Randy Hughes, a Wisconsin farmer, that are going to talk to us today about Grown Climate Smart. Grown Climate Smart is this concept that this DeLong company, 38 facilities, ag retail, is putting out there saying, you know, we're a grain company, we're an agricultural inputs company. If we can get certain acres that adhere to certain practices, we then can package this to the end user and say, it's grown climate smart. Can we put a premium on commodities by doing this? Is it the next wave? Organic, then grown climate smart? Does the consumer really care? And then also, where's this whole thing on carbon credits, nitrate reduction, et cetera, et cetera? That's what we're delving into in this episode of The Business of Agriculture. Dylan Vaca, real quickly, thanks for bringing on your farmer customer up there. Tell us real quickly about the DeLong company, and then more importantly, you reached out to me to tell me about this Grown Climate Smart, and I said, that's an interesting topic to cover. So talk to me.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you, Damian, for having us on. So I am, a little bit bio about me is I am the brand and marketing manager for our Climate Smart Commodities award and program here that is called Grown Climate Smart. The DeLong company, you give a great explanation of it, so I won't repeat kind of what you said, but the DeLong company ended up winning a $40 million grant through 5 years through this Climate Smart Commodities grant that was, I think it was about $3 billion in total.
And that was with U.S. That was a part of the Inflation Reduction Act, which is really the Inflation Creation Act, but it was also then funneled to the USDA. Am I right?
Depending on who you ask. But okay. Yes, but yeah.
But either way, there's a big chunk of money. The United States Department of Agriculture administered the grant you got. They said, okay, we like what the DeLong company has proposed. You were part of the proposal for, it's $8 million a year. This is not chicken feed. $8 million a year for 5 years to implement the Grown Climate Smart program. And that's grant money. I mean, that's yours. And there you go.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Basically, a little bit of background about the program. If a grower or farmer adheres to or does 4 specific practices, they could do one practice, they could do all 4 practices. We offer them a per acre incentive for doing those practices, and that's where that grant money comes in. Real quick, the practices that we will incentivize and ultimately send out to growers. It's for cover crops, reduced or no-till, nutrient management plans, and windbreak establishment or renovations.
So say that again, just because the person's listening to this. If they're not a farm person, I got a lot of different folks that listen to this. What we're talking about is you as the company, you sell inputs, chemicals, biologicals, fertilizer, et cetera. You also are in the feed business, and you also are in the grain processing business. You are the place that a farmer like Randy has a lot of interface with. You will go to a guy like Randy and then give him an incentive if he does say those practices again.
Yep. Cover crops, reduced or no-till, nutrient management plans, and windbreak establishments or renovations to them.
Okay.
So four independent separate practices, but a grower farmer can do one practice, or they can do all four. They all come in at different incentive levels based on a myriad of things as far as implementation costs. Let's say for cover crop seed, things like that. So there are different levels as far as the incentive of payments. But a grower is able to do, like I said, or all four of them if they really want to.
Okay. And you're utilizing the grant money to do this. So you go to like Randy and you're like, hey, you're a pretty progressive guy. You're already doing some of these practices. We're going to sweeten the pot. Randy, are you getting in on these programs?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you seem like a sharp dude. Before I hit the record button, one of the things that we find, my father and brother, farmers, both of them deceased now, used to make this crack here in northern Indiana. We had things like oats and little hilly patches, and then we would make, use it for cattle feed. We did practices before they're incentivized. CRP comes along in 1986. And to put crappy ground into conservation reserve program, you have to have been mistreating it for the 2 of the 5 years prior to enrolling it, because they won't let you take something that has oats in it and put it in. It has to be corn ground. You know what I mean? That's the thing about these programs. They punish you if you are a responsible actor prior to initiating the program. Is that the case here with what you're doing?
Not quite. They don't necessarily punish you. They might not incentivize you as well, because their idea is to improve the environment one way or another. And they want to get the most bang for their buck. So yeah, they want to take the soil that's being washed or where there's a problem and put their money there. The soil that's already being taken good care of perhaps doesn't need the money right now, right away. But the idea of it is outstanding, to try to get the farmers to do a better job of taking care of their land, and i.e. the environment.
Okay, so you are a participant. You're a good customer of DeLong. You buy your crop inputs there. You market your grain through there, whatever. And you're in. Tell me again, Wisconsin.
Janesville.
Yep. And traditional farm operation: corn, soybeans, wheat.
No, we have a lot of specialty crops. We grow quite a few vegetables. We're almost half organic and have been since 1991.
Fantastic. So you are definitely a different breed. And so this kind of thing, organic is still the gold standard. I've quibbled about some of the marketing claims, but I certainly, from a business fundamental standpoint, applaud organic, because even now we're 10, 20, 30 years in, as you point out, we're still commanding a pretty damn big premium on something that has the organic certification. And that's value added to somebody like you.
That's exactly right. Yes. And people are not only buying the product, they're buying the process. And that's what's happening here also, is that when we do something special, carbon capture or any of the things that Dylan talked about, that's where the money is going to try to incentivize those. But in order for somebody to recoup that, they have to get more for the product on the other end. And there has to be a consumer that wants to do that wants to support that. So it's like buying a more fuel efficient car, or upgrading the insulation in your home. It's got to pay in the long run, but right away, the whole idea is to help the environment. And I think this does that.
I'm all for that. I will say, and this is worth us talking about, I oftentimes talk about, my marketing background and my consumer behavior classes or advertising. You said the consumer's buying a process. I said paying for a process. I would say what they're really buying is the feeling. They don't really know what the hell happens at your farm outside of Janesville, Wisconsin. They just know that it makes them feel good, and it gives them an emotional feeling that if they buy something that has grown climate smart, grown organically, whatever, they feel good about themselves, because they truly are probably so far removed from ag production, they don't know that much about it. I would say it's that less about the process and more about the feeling that they're actually paying for. How do you think?
No, I'm not sure I agree with it. I think there's that too. Absolutely, there's that. But a lot of people really do understand what it takes to become organic and how hard it is to get certified. And if you don't do things right and get inspected properly and pass those inspections, or take care of any little glitch that might be there, you will lose your certification. When I see an organic label slapped on something, I believe that truly is organic, unless there's some huge amount of fraud that you just can't avoid sometimes.
You went right down the road of saying that I was questioning the legitimacy of it. I said I never did question the legitimacy of it, Mr. Randy Hughes. I said what the consumer is buying, what they're paying for, is the feeling more than the process.
Well, I guess aren't they the same thing? You get the feeling because of the process. The consumer realizes that there's been some things done that are obviously more time consuming, more expensive, those sorts of things. But the reason that we're doing those kinds of things is to make the environment the beneficiary. And so, yes, it gives you the warm fuzzy when you buy it. You feel like you're helping the environment. But I guess maybe we're saying the same thing, that, yeah, we truly, people, I think, are becoming more and more concerned about where their food comes from. So there's the health benefits in addition to the environmental benefits. So the two of those things are what are causing people to do it. And I think that the Climate Smart is an extension of that. You don't have to dive in to be 100% organic. You can do an awful lot right here and get incentivized to do it without, at this point, that's what the beauty of this particular program is, without having to get more for it on the other end, because it's a grant. Right now, it's a kickstart. It's what we want to do to try to get the thing going. So
I want to dig into the money part of it. Dylan told me you were highly contentious. I mean, at first I didn't think that. When we started recording, I thought, oh, he's probably like a Wisconsin guy, like eats bratwurst and cheese and like drinks beer. And now you are fighting with me, but that's okay. Let's go down that very road about the business side of it. And there's a question for both of you. Organic commands a premium because there is, even though I believe there's fraud, because where anywhere that there's a premium of money to be made, there is going to be bad actors. And I think we can all admit that there's probably some of that. But anyway, organic commands a premium because there's belief in USDA organic certification. And obviously it's been around long enough. It's got consumer acceptance, and there's this certain shopper, maybe not in rural Huntington County where I am, but certainly in more affluent areas, larger areas, Whole Foods, whatever, that is going to fetch that premium. We are in an absolute experiment now with Grown Climate Smart. Ain't nobody ever stuck Grown Climate Smart on anything and gotten a premium out of it. Organic has a marketing lobby. I think Randy might help me out here. It's called like the Organic Food Growers Association or something. There are two, if I'm not mistaken, trade groups on the organic side. You don't have that yet. Will it get there? Will we see this?
Well, sure. And it's similar to GMO versus non-GMO. There are people that want a specific thing, and if you grow that for them, it will be there. We grow both. I'm organic and I'm conventional. And I get a lot of people say to me, how can you talk out of both sides of your mouth? There are some pieces that don't lend themselves well to organic at all. For instance, would be right next to the city where there's development that's going to take place. You spend the 3 years to get it all cleaned up, and then they develop it and you lose the very next year. So that's one place we wouldn't want to do it. Also, ground that tends to be a little low or floods, we have to cultivate. And sometimes you just can't get in there to cultivate when it's low. So we avoid farms like that. The other ones we try to convert over into organics, just because it makes all kinds of sense for us.
Randy, real quickly, the thing that, again, we have viewers and listeners I have investors and I have, food processors. To those people, to what you said, because I always like to make sure I'm explaining things that are very common for you that wouldn't be for some. That 3-year thing that you just spoke about, the average person doesn't even know what that is. Because when we talk about there's a bigger cost to converting to organic, can you just go a little deeper on that?
They call it the transition period. So you can't use any pesticides or chemicals that aren't allowed on the organic stuff for 3 years before you can get certified and sell that crop at the premium that you're speaking of. So there are two things that get you. One is you have the more expensive production because you are growing it organically, but you aren't certified yet, so you don't get the premium. So it's 3 years of more input with less income. The next thing is that the organic soil has I think a higher microbial life in it. It's more alive, and it takes a while for that soil to get up and going organically. They make you wait 3 years so that anything that might be in any residues are digested or have left the soil. And so by waiting that 3 years, you have quite a bit of money invested. So that's what I was talking about, till you can finally get certified and sell organic.
And remember, we did that for the benefit of the listener. I knew that, but I think it's always important to don't do it. Let's never expect that our listeners are as in tune with every single angle on this. So what we said though is, there's already the acceptance of the organic, and there's one or two or three trade groups for organic that are perpetuating that. We don't have a trade group for grown climate smart, and we don't have a label for grown climate smart. Will there be this thing that the DeLong company is doing? It works right now because you're getting $8 million of grant money for the next 5 years. Yeah. Will it work in year 6, and how?
And I think yes. The reason is because there are people like the DeLong companies doing it. You asked me if I was a regular farmer. I said, no, we do a lot of specialty crop. We run over 5,000 acres, and we don't have any corn that goes for number 2 corn, or any soybeans goes number 2 beans for regular soybean oil and meal or ethanol. Right. I'm fine with those products. We grow things for a premium, and all of that goes through the DeLong company. So we've been getting a premium for certain varieties of corn because of their color and their test weight, or non-GMO, or food grade, or clear hilum. There are a lot of different ways, and so yeah, they've already done that. All they have to do is get enough people growing it, and then come up with that. Am I reasonable on that?
Yes. Yeah, no. Randy's 100% correct. And just to back up a little bit. That's kind of what we're doing, and why we're speaking to people like you and getting the word out there is the educational process, and getting the word out that, there are people out there realizing, a premium on that grain and for these commodities. So that's kind of part of it. You're right. There's not a unified state for sustainable grains right now, essentially, but hopefully with this Grown Climate Smart name and the Grown Climate Smart logo that we have, and the good grower base and customers that we already currently have, we can be right there in that market and help driving premiums.
By the way, and I'm all about making more money. I want you to make more money. Trust me, I'm all about making money. I'm going to come back and ask you a couple more questions about how this will play out, because again, you've got some history on the organic side where labeling has brought premium, and we don't have any of that for this yet. Before I do that, speaking about making money, you want to make money? I want to make money. I like making money. What if you have farm ground that you actually are leaving some potential revenue sources off the table? I'm talking about ecosystems marketing. A company called Truterra that sponsors me here is somebody you could potentially work with. Truterra, the idea is you can go and sign up your acres. Maybe you're not in the geography where DeLong company is, so you have no option to use my friend Dylan here to make money off of them. Maybe you're in Nebraska. You know what? Cover crops, reduce tillage. All of a sudden, maybe you can make those acres make you more money through ecosystem marketing. The point is you get on TruterraAg.com. That's Truterra, Truterra, TruterraAg.com. You fill out a soil health survey, and then very likely, if things work out, you could be trying to enroll for a program where you get some money for acres to do things you should probably be doing anyhow. Cover crops, reduce tillage, all the sort of things that will actually improve your soil health. TruterraAg.com. All right. You've got a lot of work to do if you're going to get brand recognition for Grown Climate Smart, number one. Number two, organic largely. Now, we know that I've got a friend that's an organic producer of things like wheat and soybeans. He gets $35 a bushel for organic soybeans. That's all good for him. But none of that is
anymore.
Well, he did. Okay, he did. So here's the thing. But some of this stuff, Randy, depends on a consumer. And when we're talking about some of the stuff that's going through the DeLong company, it's not Mrs. Homeowner at the Kroger. It's 2 layers before that. It's a processor. And so they have to be able to get more for the product. That's where I think there's going to be some stickiness. Am I right?
Absolutely, you're right. When I was talking about it earlier, when people say to me, how can you be conventional and organic at the same time? And I mentioned that some fields just lend themselves well. And they say, geez, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. How can you believe both systems? And my question to them is your cupboard completely full of organic food, 100%? And the answer most of the time is no.
No.
A lot of times it's a lot of it, except for I get my something here or something there. It's not 100% organic. When it is, the farmers would actually be forced to be 100% organic, wouldn't they? So it's consumer driven. You are absolutely right that it is consumer driven. And if the consumer says, I am not going to do this anymore, then it will change. It is consumer driven. We aren't going to grow something we can't sell. And right now, I can with the DeLong company, I could sell my entire crop of conventional corn, 300,000 bushels of corn, with a phone call and one guy, and I'd be done. I couldn't do that in the organic market. It's just not ready for that kind of quantity and those sorts of things. So you have to have a market set up, and it's just a little bit harder to do it. It just isn't grown the way that the conventional market has.
Okay, this is kind of a big undertaking, Dylan. If it's General Mills, if General Mills and Cargill team up to create Grown Climate Smart, let's face it, no offense to the DeLong company, or successful company, got 38 facilities, but you ain't Cargill combining with General Mills. You're not ADM, you're not the four big grain handlers and a cereal company and another food company. You start seeing those kinds of synergies coming together. This is going to happen quickly. You're regional, and you don't really have consumer, you're not consumer facing. And so this is going to be a little tougher grind. Well,
a good analogy, but think back years ago when the foreign cars came into the United States, and a lot of folks.
Dylan has no idea. He's 26 years old, Randy. You and I remember when it was the big three out of Detroit, and like somebody from Japan brought a Honda over, and everybody said, that junky little thing's from Japan. He was probably conceived in the back of a Honda Accord, for God's sakes.
Well, it's his turn to learn. So, and you're a good analogy. You're exactly right, because what happened is the consumers said, we don't mind driving these smaller cars that get good mileage and last a long time. We don't have to have the huge cars all the time. It's about money for them, but then pretty soon there was some handling. Pretty soon there was maybe some durability and some longevity. And all of a sudden the consumer said, we aren't going to just buy our cars from the big three. It wasn't the manufacturers that changed that. It was the consumers. And that could happen here. So DeLong's is in on the ground floor, in my mind, of people becoming more and more concerned with it. The next generation has bigger concerns about the environment than I think my generation did.
Yeah, there's definitely some truth to that. And I've got a recording in the can with an organic poultry processor. And again, people are going to think that I'm all going down this road. No, I'm just looking at different avenues of making more margin, because let's face it, in commodity production agriculture in the United States of America, since somewhere about post-World War II, has been a break-even business, has been a 0 to 6% margin business. I mean, it just is. That's what the nature of what we're in. So any way that we squeeze out more margin on value-added products, I think is brilliant. I think acceptance is going to be a little challenge, but also the brand awareness is going to be the first challenge. We are all in agreement that there's a consumer that wants to pay a bit more. Is it every consumer? No. Does Dollar General still sell groceries to people that are very hand to mouth, that don't want to pay? Absolutely, whatever. But there's going to be some grind on this, and I wonder if the 5-year grant money is enough. In year 6, the training wheels come off. Dylan, in year 6, the training wheels come off. Yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think at the DeLong company, we're well aware of, there is a timeline of 5 years, and what happens after 5 years. I think the really good, scenario that we're in right now and what we're doing is we already realize that we're not waiting till year 3, 4, 5 to kind of build that out and think about what year 6 means. I will say that, we have been seriously considering that and thinking about how we can start driving these premiums and getting this brand awareness out there through multiple channels and supply chain and anything through there. So we're very cognizant of that, and that's definitely a huge goal for us is hopefully sooner rather than later that we can put something together that it's not like we're scrambling in year 6.
Dylan, you sent me something that said you've got 250,000 acres in 4 states, 3 to 5 states?
I would say, yeah, about that in that specific amount of states. Our program itself is ran through, we can take growers in 11 different states. In total, we're about a little over 280,000 now.
All right, I'm not playing devil's advocate per se, but I'm playing the question, because remember, I'm asking the questions that someone is driving their truck right now, tractor, whatever, is thinking. I just now get this money. The DeLong company gives me money if I do windbreaks. I should do windbreaks anyhow. I should I should care about that anyhow. To do cover crops, largely I should do those things anyhow. Reduce tillage, all those things. Now I have this money and I count on it. It was gravy money this year, but by year 3, I'm building it into my revenue picture. And then I'm going to go and pay more for cash rent down the road. I'm going to buy a chunk of property because I have this new revenue, and this gets built and baked in. So, and I think maybe this is more of a question for Randy. How do you have the discipline then? This thing might go kaput after 5 years. You've now built this into your revenue picture, and oh crap, that's a couple $100 an acre, $100 an acre, whatever it is, $100,000 a year, $1 million a year if you're a large enough farmer, whatever that number is. The point is, it's all relative. I build this into my revenue picture, and boom, the rug got pulled out.
Yeah, Damon, here's one of the parts I think you're missing. That very well could happen. We don't know what the market is going to do. But what happens if during that 5 years, the farmer realizes that cover crops pay, separate of whether or not you make more money? What happens if they realize what the windbreaks really can do for not just the environment, for the pocketbooks? Cover crops, every time people ask me, do you have any livestock? I say, yes. What do you have? Cattle, pigs? No. I have microorganisms in my soil, billions and billions and billions of them. And those little guys need to be fed just like anything else. And cover crops is what they eat. So when you go out there and put cover crops on, you're making your soil more healthy. And when you realize that and understand which cover crops work well, then all of a sudden your crops start to do better next year, and you don't necessarily need the premium. If you get the premium on top of that, because now the consumer is saying, wow, this is really good news. Not only are they doing a good job, but we can end up paying them a little bit more too, and everybody wins. So I think it's a great program to get that kickstarted, because to spend the money and not know if that's going to work, maybe that doesn't happen. Farmers are pretty good environmentalists. They're better environmentalists when it pays. And I think this will teach us to make it pay. That's what I'm hoping for.
By the way, I agree with you. And I'm a landowner and I'm a farm guy, but I also know that many farm operators are very much this season. They're not as long-term. And some of those things, a windbreak or the benefits of cover cropping, you'll see over time versus in the next 3 to 6 months. So it's you've got to have a bit more of a vision for the long haul to want to adopt those programs.
Well, you as a landowner, you might see that in farmers. On the farms that they own, sometimes that's a little different. When you're renting land, you never know when the next contract comes up and the guy's going to outbid you and you're done. So when you start building soil microbial life, that is a long-term goal, yes, that's true. On our farms that we own, they get treated with more manure if there's a cover crop that we're going to do there, because these things do take years for that stuff to break down and to create the soil nutrients, availability that we're after, a soil structure, all of those sorts of things. Building a windbreak or planning a windbreak on a 3-year land contract, that doesn't make any sense unless somebody is helping you to pay for it.
Yeah, right.
You're building.
I appreciate that you finally just admitted that farmers don't treat rented ground like they would their own. I appreciate you admitting that. Okay. Other stuff here on this.
In the butt, I can see that now, but
what?
Well, of course, you want to take as good a care of the land as you can, but when you start talking about long-term things, that's what you would do. As something as simple as a driveway. If you own the farm, you're going to be there 20 years and it needs a driveway. You build a beautiful driveway that lasts you forever. On the rented farm, you put a couple of loads of rock in there so you can get the crop out. I mean, it's just that much difference. You as a landlord could change that by saying, here's the deal. We will come up with something that keeps you profitable for 20 years, and then they could afford to do that. It isn't just the farmer that's not treating it. It's the landlord sometimes that won't let you treat it because they got you on the short little leash.
Dylan, I'm going to go back to the question. I thought Wisconsin people were nice, jovial, beer drinking, football watching, cheddar wurst eating, cheese curd ingesting humans. And this guy just wants to fight with me all the time. All right. Let's go back to the business side of it. The adoption of these things, let's just say it goes crazy. And then here's the other part. Let's say that some of the new farm bill, I've predicted the new farm bill, if not this one, the one 5 years from now for sure, is going to be laden with environmental stuff. That's the sentiment in Washington, D.C. It's what gets particularly the left. It runs on it, organic, anti this, whatever, that thing. What if the program you are offering right now becomes everybody gets it? The one benefit you have, Dylan, is you've branded it called Grown Climate Smart, but it might become the new commodity. In other words, every acre in America, and it could very well be this way, I think, and Randy can give me his thoughts, I'm sure he will, on if I want to participate in USDA programs, I have to do cover crops. If I want to participate in USDA programs, I have to demonstrate a reduction of nitrates. I have to demonstrate certain climate-friendly things. And if that becomes the case, your stuff isn't so differentiated. And I'm sure that's something that the smart people at DeLong Company, including you, have considered.
Yeah. No, I think you're right on with that. And I will say, building a market for it, there doesn't necessarily need to be one player, two player, three players. I think there's enough out there that everybody could have a good footing in it and make money from. And that's part of the Climate Smart Commodities grant. I think there's 141 different projects out there that are, some of them are very similar to ours. There's some that do forestry. There's some that do livestock. I think the end goal is it should be for all these different projects to come together and build a sustainable market together, and not necessarily competing against each other, but unifying the market so that we can all win.
Randy?
Yes.
Well, I know that you're over there. You're ready to give me your thoughts or your disagreement.
I am.
Well, first off, and I didn't say anything that's, honestly, all joking aside, I didn't say anything that is in any way disagreeing with anybody. There is this reality, and I believe this is what's going to happen. I believe the government's going to toss so damn much money out here, whether it's Farm Bill, whatever the thing is, just like this one that came up, this $3 billion that the DeLong company got part of. And it's going to be, we want more of this stuff. And, I talked to my brother. He visited me this weekend. He works for the United States Department of Agriculture. We think eventually you participate in the crop insurance program to be eligible for the crop insurance, subsidizing, which is what it is. You do this, this, and this. That's where I think things are going. And so, in other words, this might not be as novel 3 years from now, the Grown Climate Smart. It might end up being pretty widely practiced.
It might, and who knows what the future gets. But right now, I think it's a great program, because if that's true and that legislation does come down, we're ready for it. We've learned. We've been able to get out ahead of it. Or the other side of it is, like I mentioned before, what happens if we all learn to do a better job and everybody's happy? That's what could happen out of this. Maybe DeLong doesn't make a lot of money on it because they've come up with a new market for some grain. Maybe that happens. But I can tell you that the DeLong company in this area has done a tremendous number of things to help us move our grain. I'm selling non-GMO beans to Japan from Janesville, Wisconsin, and I don't grow that much that anybody would talk to me. By having the connections like that, other grain dealers in the area or other people that are doing these specialty grains can do that. One of the things that the DeLong company did was to do it with containers rather than taking a whole ship. They do it in containers. Now they can go to an awful lot of different places where they couldn't go before because it was a whole ship. There might be a market.
By the way, your point there is there wasn't enough supply of, because everything needs the infrastructure. Your point was there wasn't enough organic chickpeas or soybeans or whatever in a given area to then try and fill a ship, but there is enough to fill 5 containers. That's kind of what you're saying?
No, I think it's more about the buyers on the other end. People weren't ready to take a whole load. I think that you could find this much in the U.S. and fill a ship, but when you get over there, who needs a whole shipload of organic soybeans? But if you have a ship that has containers of corn and beans and wheat on it, and you might make 3 stops, all of a sudden you've created a market that isn't there. And my point is that they have done that with a, quote, specialty crop. That's what it is, something other than number 2 corn or number 2 beans. And I think that could happen with this also. Is everybody going to buy it? No, they won't. I understand it. Some people don't care. I had a farm that I was renting one time. The lady wanted to raise the rent. And I said, geez, we're already high enough. I'm complaining like a regular farmer. I said, it's organic. And you want to just have $5 more from the guy next door? What about all of the things that I'm doing for the ground and the environment and everything? She looked right at me and said, I'll take the $5. She wasn't interested. Just wasn't. And everybody isn't going to be interested.
Well, and that's the point about the consumer, and to be in agreement with you, at least to a certain degree, the general North American agricultural producer thinks that everybody should think like he or she. And I tell my ag crowds this all the time. You think like a farmer. I live half the year in Paradise Valley, Arizona. Trust me, those people don't even know what the hell that is. You think, well, why in the hell did you pay 19 cents more for that? Just because we're organic? I'm like, 19 cents. First off, they don't even care. They don't even see it. And thirdly, if they do see it, it's because it makes them feel like they're superior to somebody that can't. And that's what a lot of ag people, they don't ever put themselves in the position of the consumer or that mindset. So you and I are slightly in agreement on that. Dylan, what question did I not ask? We're going to get ready to wrap up and get out of here. What question about this thing did I not ask that you think the viewer or listener absolutely needs or right now has on their cusp of their mind?
Yeah, I would say a really good, value proposition about our program, and from everybody that we've spoken to and growers out there that have had problem getting into programs like this before, is that it has to necessarily be a new practice or start a new. There's other programs out there that don't let, or they don't incentivize growers that have been doing this practice for 10, 15, 20 years. We spoke with handfuls of farmers that have been doing no-till or have been doing cover crops for 15 plus years, and they feel like they get penalized by these other programs because they can't get incentivized. And they look and see,
because they're already doing what they probably should have been doing, and the new program won't take them in because, oh crap, it's like we talked about at the very beginning of the show. Usually CRP and some of the programs have only rewarded you if you were a bad actor previous or not as environmental of an actor, I should say.
And I'll say that's a good thing about our program, is that we work with farmers that have been doing it for years, and we're able to incentivize them and still get them payments. So that's a really nice thing, and a really a good thing about our program of why we've been able to grow it like we have, because we can still incentivize growers that have been doing these practices and doing the right things for a long time.
Dylan, I have CRP ground out here for a windbreak program. It's been in since 2007. In fact, they re-upped me because it's a 15-year program. If I'm a DeLong person, can I keep my $214 that I'm getting from the Department of Agriculture for that windbreak and then also get money from you?
Well, it depends. Each practice is, and how I like to say it,
that's what I call double cropping right there, Randy. That's called farmer owner double cropping right there. Get some
double dipping. Yeah. But yes, same thing.
I was going to say double dipping. We can't allow for
double cropping, double dipping.
Yeah,
you got to actually plant the other crop.
Yeah, we can't. Offer you an incentive if it's already in a program like that. But I will say each practice is independent of each other. So a lot of times what we've seen is someone is in a program already for cover crops and they're not necessarily getting incentivized for a reduced or no-till. And we're still able to incentivize that because each practice is, like I said, independent of each other.
Isn't Damian saying, though, that here he is doing a good thing and he's not eligible? Right. And that's one of the issues, and a lot of farmers do feel that way. You're very
except in all fairness, I am getting whatever the payment is from Natural Resource Conservation Service as part of my 15-year contract, which I always have to tell the suburban friends of mine, you're getting paid to not farm that ground. I said, well, first off, it's very little ground, and secondly, I'm also in a contract. Like, they think that you just get this money dropped in your lap. Like, it's an actual contract with the United States Department of Agriculture that stipulates you're going to have trees. It's going to be this species. You're going to do this for the care of it for a 15-year term. It's a rental. It's a rental agreement, frankly. And yours is not, by the way. Yours is not a rental. And then the next question about yours, is it yearly? Because hell, I could put in cover crops and then not have them the next year. So yours, I assume, is an annual thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Not only are we able to incentivize growers that have been doing practices for years, the really nice part about our program is it's flexible for the grower and the farmer himself, right? You're right, it's an annual thing. So every year a grower basically has to re-enroll into our program. And at that point, they can decide, hey, I want to drop the program. I want to stay in the program and get the same incentives. I want to add acres. I want to drop acres.
Yeah. So it's year to year. It's year to year, and then last, hold on, this audit thing. Randy's a 5,000 acre farmer. I don't know. He has probably a certain number of those acres, certainly not all of it, that are in some type of one of these programs with you. Who keeps an eye on him?
Yeah, so we do have an audit. Part of the grant and program itself. That when a grower signs up, they're fully aware that there's a chance that they will be audited. Obviously, the farmer will be compensated for that audit, but that's definitely a part of our program to make sure. And a part of enrolling is submitting proofs of practice to us to say, hey, actually, doing these practices, whether it's pictures, whether it's seed receipts, whether it's anything like that. There are multiple checks and balances in our program.
Got it. Randy, you seem like the kind of person that really likes to have the last word, so I'm going to give it to you.
Well, thank you. That's very nice of you. First of all, thank you for caring and also for getting it out to the our urban people, our customers. This is a good thing when we have venues like this to do it. And I really appreciate that. And I do believe this is a good program. And I feel like we might make money on it. DeLong's might make money on it. But one thing that's definitely going to happen is that the environment is going to get improved. And that's why I'm here.
Yeah, and in all seriousness, there's a lot of people think organic is all about improving the environment, and I explain, well, there are approved chemistries for organic, and there's some other things like that. You can't argue against windbreaks, reduce tillage, and cover crops, and management of nutrients. There's this one is less prone to nitpicking, like, you know what I mean, than say the organic would be like, yeah, but organic, they use copper, for instance, for pest control, and copper can build up and there can be copper toxicity, etc. This one, how the hell do you argue against? Yeah, let's see. That ground's worth $14,000 an acre. We stopped tilling it so much, so it's less erodible, and we put cover crops on it, which enriches those microorganisms you spoke about. So, yeah, I agree with you. And I told you your last word, but I had to go ahead and put a little suffix on all that. By the way, thanks for being here, Dylan. Thanks for lining this up. I appreciate it. That's Dylan Vaca with the DeLong Company. If you want to learn more about this, where do they go?
They can go to the DeLong Company website itself, or they can go to our CSC specific website, grownclimatesmart.com. You can find us on socials too. We have regular updates, and yeah.
And DeLong is DE, the word long, like not short. DELONG is the name of the company. And then our friend from the Janesville, Wisconsin area is Randy Hughes. Maybe in another few years you come back and we talk about this and see where it is going into the final stages. What do you think?
Yeah, great idea.
Got it. Till next time, it's Randy Hughes. It's Dylan Vaca. I'm Damian Mason, and this is The Business of Agriculture. Well, that concludes another fantastic episode of The Business of Agriculture. This episode was brought to you by Pattern Ag. Everybody in agriculture understands the importance of soil health. We also keep an eye on our soil better than we ever did through advanced soil testing. But what if there was a company that provided predictive analytics, not just checking out nutrients and all the elements that are in there, but also could tell you the degree of risk you face with disease and pest pressure? That's right, Pattern Ag can do that. They actually can tell you, hey, you're going to have a real issue here. You can proactively treat for corn rootworm or cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome before the problem actually starts costing you yield. Go to pattern.ag, that's www.pattern.ag, to find the nearest rep that can help you start doing better for your soil.